If I Told the Truth, a Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction written and narrated by Mira Rose, with artwork by Sync on Instagram. You can find a link to them in the description box. As you may be able to tell by the title, this is a compilation of all 3 parts of the mini-series If I Told the Truth, with, Lukanette, an identity reveal, fluff. If you like Lukanette, you should enjoy this story. Keep listening. Luka Kofian as Vipereon. There was something about the way Ladybug looked at him that Vipereon couldn't shake off at the end of the Akuma fight. He knew better than to ask, and he wouldn't risk reversing time and throwing off a victory to know, but she confirmed his suspicion when Cat Noir collected his Miraculous instead of her. What battle raged behind her eyes when she looked at him? He couldn't figure it out. He'd thought she'd chosen him as either Adrian's replacement or because of his motivation for being akumatized the first time. He'd prefer the latter reason, of course, but all things considered, he couldn't be surprised if he came in second place to his sunshine best friend. It was hard not to be bitter about it, but Adrian was, truly, a good guy. He could see why Marinette and his friends liked him. Even if he wasn't, the heart can't always choose who it stabs itself for. The same way his couldn't help but bleed for Marinette. Well, perhaps that wasn't the right expression, but it sounded right to his ears. "Thanks again, man," Cat said, holding out his hand. "Yeah, sure thing." Luka slipped off the bracelet, already de-transformed whilst lost in thought, and handed it over. "Make sure he gets fed." "Will do." Cat's ring beeped, and he scurried away. Perhaps Cat would be someone he could talk to about his feelings. He was still sore over Marinette, and, while he wanted to wait for her to be comfortable, or simply choose him over Adrian, her actions left a chasm in his chest. He missed his guitar. It was his dearest companion, especially whilst thinking about Marinette. Trudging back home, Luka found rhythm in the flow of water beneath the boards, pulsing each new chord. Okay, perhaps that was a bit too poetic, but he did go to his room and pluck out a few chords, rocking to the rhythm until the pulse got disturbed by a dip into water. There was someone else on the boat. Luka, keeping a level head, set down his guitar and grabbed the bat. It was probably Mom or Julika or even Nino coming by for a chat, but one could never be too careful. He stood on his bed as footsteps approached, too unfamiliar pattern to be his family, and kept the bat raised, grateful for the corner element of surprise. A knock came from around the corner, and he exhaled, lowered the bat, and jumped off the bed to talk to his visitor. Ladybug. She looked about as surprised as he felt. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" he asked, dropping his bat against the wall. Someday he'd get a room with an actual door. She looked away without a greeting, clearly mulling something over. Luka sat on the bed, reclaiming his guitar, and started strumming. Sometimes it's easier to talk with background music to set the mood. Something light in a major key should do the trick. "Yes?" Ladybug pulled out the snake Miraculous and held it out. "How much do you want this?" "Could you be clearer?" The question shook him enough to stop strumming. "I have something to tell you, but if I do, you can't ever have this." "A Miraculous?" "Yes." "Not just that one?" She sucked in a breath through her teeth. "Yes." "Is this something you need to tell me, or just someone. She cut herself off, expression darkening. I'm not sure. Will it benefit either of us? I'm not sure. One of us? Ladybug bit her lip, then nodded. It should. Sorry, little buddy, Luca said, reaching out to run his finger over the bracelet. What's going on? He gestured for her to sit next to him as she wrung her fingers. Thanks. Take your time. And that she did. Ladybug rocked her weight as she sat beside him. Okay. Well, she muttered. Spots off. Luca, until this moment, had thought it was hard to get surprised. He lived in a city with a supervillain, a flirtatious catboy, and was given temporary superpowers from the world-famous superhero and icon multiple times. So, even though it all clicked together in a moment, both the digs at his heart and why he was chosen for Miraculous from the start, he found himself without words in his mouth nor song in his heart when Ladybug melted into Marinette beside him. But, more importantly, she was crying. That's no good. And that weighed his heart down more than the shock of the moment. Hey now, he said, wrapping his jacket around her. Take a breath. Sorry, she gasped, trying and failing to maintain composure. I can see that. You're awesome, Marinette. She blinked a few times. Her tears stopped as she stared in surprise at his tease. Luca! She coughed, her face streaked. I mean it. You're awesome. But He picked up his guitar again and started strumming. Any requests? He didn't have to look at her to know her jaw was on the floor. He had to process his reaction too, but he didn't want to talk about it in real time. The least he could do was not antagonize her for being responsible. You're... she began. Luca pursed his lips, then set the guitar to the side. Come here, he said, pulling her to his chest with one arm as he flung a blanket over with the other. It's fort time. He didn't ask if she'd told Cat Noir, and he didn't ask why she did this or what it meant for the two of them. Instead, he held her to his chest, listening to the beat in his chest until she reached up and held him back long enough for him to wonder if she'd cried herself to sleep as he rubbed her back. Oh, this girl. The weight of the world was on her shoulders, and the answer as to why floated in front of him. Looking at the little red bug hovering in front of him, Luca knew why Marinette hadn't told the truth. Part 2. Tiki, Kwame of the Ladybug Miraculous. Tiki hovered in front of Luca, arms crossed and eyes narrow, as the two of them studied the other in silence. She'd seen him plenty of times, but never in a way that included eye contact. He was pretty. It was easy to see why he'd swayed Marinette from her hyperfixation on Adrian, and he had her gratitude for that, but it was irksome that she revealed her identity to him first. It should have been Cat Noir if it were to be anyone. But Tiki understood. If Luca wasn't Vipereon anymore, then no one would capture him for extortion. And, more than anything, Marinette needed to be able to talk to someone of her own kind, and to not lie to one of her own kind to keep functioning. If he was the dam to stop her tears, then so be it. And as much as Tiki loved the current Cat Noir, confiding in Luka was safer. She hated to admit it, but she wasn't as upset as she could be at her master's choice. "What's your name, little bug?" Luka whispered, his voice light as it hovered above Marinette.
"Tiki."
She didn't look at Sass as he planted himself on his master's shoulder. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Tiki. I'm Luka." He was one of the more level-headed masters she'd met in the past few thousand years.
"Any questions?"
she asked, tilting her head. "I'll let Marinette answer them, if you don't mind."
"You've got your wits about you."
"I take every day beat by beat."
"I hate to admit it,"
Tiki said, floating down to curl up with Marinette.
"but I think she made the right choice."
"Trusting me with her identity?"
"You'd better not get akumatized, you hear me?"
His face paled, and he, finally, broke eye contact. "I don't know if I can't." Tiki sighed, looking down. He'd been akumatized for such righteous reasons, she couldn't be upset. But it also meant he couldn't fight off an Akuma. Then again, not many could. Tiki wasn't sure if Cat Noir, rather Adrian, could fight one off either, but it didn't make her feel any better.
"That sense of justice will be your downfall."
He scoffed, then brushed Marinette's bangs over with his fingertips. "As long as it isn't hers."
"Aren't you curious?"
"About?" Tiki had to think.
"Who everyone is?"
"You mean Cat Noir?" "No. I couldn't care less, actually. I really only have one question for her, actually."
"What is it?"
Luka looked up, then winked. "Like I said, it's for her." This boy. Judging by the smirk on Sass's face, he knew this boy was a perfect match for him.
"I'll let the two of you talk then."
Snuggling into the hoodie that smelled like Luka, brushed over with Marinette's shampoo, Tiki closed her eyes, trusting the boy as much as she trusted her master. It was hard, but Tiki was glad her master finally had someone else to tell her truths to. Part 3. Marinette Dupang Chang. Marinette woke up warm, but not the sticky, sweaty kind of warm. No, she was the kind of warm that lit late-night talks with friends and nostalgic poetry. Wrapped in a blanket on Luka's leg, Marinette found his embrace soft against his rigid chest, until she realized why she was there in the first place. Restraining herself from bolting upright, she glanced above her to see Luka had fallen asleep as well, his back against the wall and his arm around her back. Before she could process the overwhelming, intimate feeling and trust sweeping over her, she saw Tiki, sitting on Luka's shoulder and looking down at her. Oops. The Kwami had her arms crossed and an eyebrow raised when they locked eyes, and suddenly the wallpaper became interesting to study. Yeah, this was the perfect time to study interior design. Her little partner didn't need to use words to communicate what was on her mind, however. She knew exactly what Tiki said with a look. "Oops," she mouthed, and her Kwami sighed in response. Sass flew in, raising a hand for a high five, and, when Tiki didn't return the gesture, moved on to settle in the hood of Luka's jacket Marinette wore. She probably should have talked this over with her first. Luka stirred at her sigh and looked down. eyes bleary as recognition buffered on his face. Once he recognized her, he let down a gentle smile, and Marinette felt the warm butterflies she'd trapped beat their wings against the netting. He knew. Someone knew. But most importantly, Luka knew. Luka knew, despite her better judgment, because she'd shown him. Luka knew now that all the dodged dates and broken promises weren't her choosing Adrian, at least, not recently, over him. Luka knew, hopefully, why she couldn't tell him sooner. Luka knew, and for a moment, that was all she needed. Hopefully, that was all he needed, too. Hi. It was the first thing that came to her mind, and all of the confidence in the world couldn't and hadn't prepared her for the day someone found out her identity, even if it was to someone she'd chosen. Hi, he said, his arm around her back giving her a small squeeze. Have a good nap? The butterflies in her stomach broiled into moths of embarrassment, munching on her sanity bite by bite. Thanks for the jacket. Marinette reached up and tugged on the fabric over her shoulders. Anytime. The smirk he wore could kill her if she gave it a chance. Ladybug. Yep. She forced herself to meet his eyes. Ladybug. I don't suppose I couldn't get away with calling you Bugaboo now, can I? The way his teeth peeked out from behind his grin let her know it was a joke, but she scowled anyway. Not if you want to live. That hefty a price? It is when Cat Noir's the debt collector. He laughed and nodded. I suppose that's fair. Luka placed a hand on her head and gave her hair a ruffle. I'll have to find one on my own. And not Marinette, she half joked, matching his smile. Was she getting too much oxygen? Her head and heart felt light as she returned his laughter. Ladybug? He tossed her a wink and she rolled her eyes. Sounds like a song. If you'd like it. Luka brought a loose section of her hair to his lips and pressed them on, and Marinette felt her breath catch. This boy had her heart, and she'd never been able to be entirely truthful to him. Even now. Yes, she let him know she was Ladybug, but that was a hard truth she hadn't even dared to show and tell to anyone. But another truth she hadn't told him was how she really felt about him. How she wanted their future to be intertwined. Will you go out with me? She blurted, knowing if she thought about it, it wouldn't happen. For ice cream? He returned, not missing a beat as he held eye contact with her, hair still pressed to his lips. Oh, he was going to make her say it. Surely it wouldn't foul up the sweet air between them, but there was always that small chance, that voice nagging in the back of her mind that reminded her sugar can be mistaken for salt. Date me, Luka. The words were so plain and straightforward, especially for her, that his look of surprise must have matched her own, if only for a moment. His raised eyebrows melted down as a grin spread across his face. As you wish, he began, tilting up her chin to face him. Ma. The distance closed between them, and Marinette realized what was happening. She realized what was happening, and her face flushed and belly twisted, but not in embarrassment. By the time he spoke her name, her lips were on his, hands twisting into his hair to pull him closer. She felt him shudder and take in a breath. And even without the counsel of the Kwamis and every past miraculous holder, Marinette knew she'd done right. Finally, after a year of lies and messing up, Marinette had found a way to speak her truth. And it just so happened to be on the lips of Lukanette. Thank you so much for listening. That was If I Told the Truth, a Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction written and narrated by Mira Rose. If you haven't already, don't forget to not only thumbs up this video, but also subscribe to this channel and hit the bell for notifications. Bonus points if you leave a comment, as it helps the YouTube algorithm. If you aren't sure what to comment, put If I Told the Truth. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!